Sounds of the Bahamas. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight.
The following portion of the news is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
The government takes steps to cut crime. Good night, Bahamas. I'm Chris Saunders. It's no secret that illegal weapons have contributed to 60% of serious crime in the country. And with the murder count at 107 for the year, a special committee comprised of Bahamian and American officials met today at police headquarters to exchange perspectives and priorities and identify how the neighboring countries can coordinate efforts to counteract the trafficking of illegal drugs, weapons, and humans. It's a partnership and a dialogue that officials hope will yield positive results. Deputy Assistant Secretary of the United States, Liliana Adelaide, says both countries have a shared interest in ensuring the safety of visitors and locals alike.
As the means and methods of criminals continues to change, law enforcement means and methods also needs to adapt to meet these challenges. Law enforcement personnel must be well equipped and well informed. Increased funding and more expansive interpretation of the range of issues involved in citizen security have allowed our partnership to include institutions like the Majesty's Prison and the Bahamas National Drug Council, which is doing important work on preventing crime and reducing the demand of drugs. Our goal during this meeting is to encourage a dialogue on citizen security and bilateral law enforcement priorities to ensure that we understand one another as we carry out this very important work.
Prime Minister Perry Christie says he's very concerned about the level of crime in the country, noting that we are now plagued with persons killing with a wanton disregard for human life. He said there is a significant percent of illegal weapons that enter the country that come from Florida, and at the meetings he said it is the fulfillment of a promise made with the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on continuing efforts to address the many crime challenges. Minister of National Security Dr. Bernard Nottage, also at the meeting, says that strong social intervention plans such as urban renewal are necessary as the link between guns and drugs remain a serious concern that contributes to serious crime.
We speak of near 5 million people coming to the Bahamas. We're speaking about the bulk of them being Americans. We're speaking of a world that is plagued by terrorism. And we're speaking of terrorists who have grown in sophistication over the years. That alone requires very close relations between the Bahamas and the United States of America and the region. So when I spoke to the Secretary, I said to her, Madam Secretary, I am deeply concerned about the incidence of guns coming into our country, illegal weaponry. And I said, so that you understand the context of my remarks, I've just been in for several days into office, but I also speak on behalf of the region. It's also plagues the region. And I happen to believe that the United States of America, with its sophistication in intelligence and its resources, can do more to help us stop that flow into the Bahamas.
A major contributing factor to the scourge of drug-related crime, gun-related crimes in our countries has been the trafficking of narcotics together with the availability of firearms. We've seen that firearms have been the weapons of choice for the protection of the contraband during transportation and are also smuggled in along with drugs. There's also been evidence that illegal drugs are traded for illegal firearms in addition to cash. These weapons are used for protecting turf, for intimidating customers and competitors, for empowering recruits into criminal enterprises, for maintaining discipline, and for executing informers. As such, we've seen a direct correlation between the drug trade, illegal firearms, and violent criminality.
Now, it's been just about 3 months now since BAHAMAS reached the third phase and final stage of its casino tower, putting it 100 feet above grade. And by doing so, it would fulfill the government's requirements for a $45 million payout to the resort, who made the advance payments for the new rerouted West Bay Street and Corridor 7. While Prime Minister Perry Christie confirmed today that BAHAMAS has fulfilled its side of the bargain and requested payment, he says there's still a delay.
I really hope that we have begun to make the payments. There has been a discussion over whether or not we are obliged to pay what they have requested, because there have been arguments on the part of our engineering consultants that we don't have to meet that full amount.
Now, the Prime Minister said that the agreement does provide for a certain amount to be spent, but it has to be certified on the basis that it was actually spent.
We do recognize the obligation to pay. Authorization has been given by the Ministry of Finance to pay, and so it's a question now of whether or not full payment has been made.
BAHAMAS Senior Vice President of Administrative and External Affairs, Robert Sandy Sands, confirmed to our news team that BAHAMAS has not received any payment as yet. However, he added that executives are continuing to work with the government. Moving on now, known political supporters such as Philip Galanis are openly working with the Say Yes campaign as the gambling referendum draws near. But Prime Minister Christie says he is not worried about what others are supporting because the government has always maintained that it does not have a horse in the race. He said today that many will vote yes and many will vote no, but it is important to move ahead with their plan so that future decisions can be made.
He's a supporter of the PLP. He's been a critical supporter of the PLP. He's been a critical supporter of Perry Christie. I mean, you know, more times than not, very critical. So, look, the Say Yes vote will attract people of all sorts, including preachers. Will be on the side of Say Yes. The Say No, Say Yes supporters will have many PLPs. The Say No supporters will have many PLPs. And I've indicated before, you know, the fact that we have no horse in the race doesn't mean that everybody in my cabinet is yes or no. There are some people in my cabinet who are yes and some people who are no.
Okay, guys, Commissioner.
So it makes very...
Also tonight, we now know the identity of the country's latest traffic fatality. She's identified as 23-year-old Rashawn Dominique Smith of Bellot Road. Police say the accident happened around 3:25 Sunday morning at Spiken Yard Road and Carmichael Road. That's where a blue 1997 Volkswagen and a silver Chevy Avalanche Jeep collided. Smith, who was a passenger in the Volkswagen, was pronounced dead at the scene. A new date has now been set to retry convicted child molester Andre Burbal. The 50-year-old Trinidadian teacher was sentenced to 35 years in prison after a jury convicted him earlier of having unnatural sex with 2 underage boys. However, as Fern Carey tells us tonight, the High Court quashed Burbal's conviction and sentence and has now ordered a retrial.
Come October 7th of next year, convicted sex offender Andre Burbal will get a second chance to present his case to jurors. The date set by Senior Justice John Isaacs this Monday. The 50-year-old Trinidadian was serving a 35-year prison term for having sex with 2 of his underage male students on Grand Bahama 13 years ago. But last week, the Court of Appeal quashed his conviction and sentence and ordered the retrial after expressing concern about the issue of collusion between Burbal's 2 accusers. The court also cited the failure of the Supreme Court judge to direct the jury properly on Burbal's good character. Meantime, during today's proceedings, Burbal raised some concerns of his own, suggesting that his 8-count indictment was not formed properly, which would not allow him to properly defend himself at retrial. Burbal also suggested that separate trials should be held for each count on the indictment. He also indicated that the place, date, and time of the alleged crimes should be better particularized to allow him to better prepare his defense. Permanent resident in the Bahamas, but the court refused and reminded Burbal that he was extradited from New York before he was arraigned and is therefore a flight risk. Meantime, Burbal remains behind bars at Fox Hill Prison. Fern, Carey, ZNS Network News.
Some good news to tell you tonight. Over a month ago, we told you the story of an elderly woman with nowhere to go and no one to turn, living in substandard conditions in a wooden home. Well, today, that dilapidated structure on Miami Street, which was 71-year-old Rosalind Clark's resident for the last 50-plus years, is no more. Our Andrew Knowles picks up this good story from here.
As a tractor bulldozed the decrepit wooden structure Rosalind Clark has lived in for over 5 decades, she couldn't bear to watch. In fact, for the last time as she walked out of her home, filled with so many memories, she refused to look back. Today, officers from the Angliston Urban Renewal, along with workers from Window World Bahamas, assisted the 71-year-old move her personal belongings into her brand new home, just in time for Christmas.
Yeah, I'd be happy. Because I've been there so long.
There's a lot of memories in that house.
Plenty. And my husband died in there too.
And it's thanks to a partnership between Urban Renewal and Goodwill community partner Window World Bahamas that Clark's fortunes has changed. Window World has invested over $30,000 into the project. Her new home was also fully furnished with a bed and bedroom set, a sofa, stove, and refrigerator, among other appliances, and even hurricane windows. Not to mention, it's an energy-efficient home.
Urban Renewal is responsible for the actual construction and the actual operation. We're dealing with the contractors and getting this sorted out. We also provide the furnitures through the government agencies and electricity and water and everything else. We deal with that.
Window World got involved after speaking with Urban Renewal, and from the ground up through the plans and did the entire construction.
Why did you see the need to get involved in such a project?
When you see the older folks, those that brought us into this world punishing because of the condition they live in, you must step in and do something.
Not one for much words, Clark's son, Don, sat and watched as the home he grew up in was demolished. He expressed gratitude to those touched by his mother's unfortunate state. Meantime, Inspector McKenzie says helping people like Clark is at the core of Urban Renewal.
Better than how it was. And I thank you all for what you all done. That's all I can say.
We're trying to help those in need and those who are looking for help. They can just come to Urban Renewal. We try and assist them the best that we can.
And now that she's moved out of the old home, she won't officially take up residence in this new home until Wednesday. That's when the official handing over ceremony will take place. Andrew Knowles, ZNS Network News.
The latest on that NIB report, the newest twist coming up.